Okay, Vice Chancellor Quinlivan. Item 6.3, community college contributions to jobs and the economy. I know you have a couple guests.
Yes, I do. One just stepped out.
Oh.
So I don't know if you want to take them, right?
Do you have a PowerPoint or no? So
We have two flyers we're distributing.
okay.
Okay. All right, I know we're rounding out the morning. I'm delighted again that we have a chance to focus on jobs in the economy and community college contribution to jobs in the economy. Last session, we invited, you heard from state players who shared what was needed from us at a state level in terms of our workforce mission and in terms of jobs in the economy, and observations about where we may have policy misfits between existing policies and what needs to get done on the workforce mission. Yesterday, as we talked about the shape-shifting of the architecture of how we're going to fund programs, we named some of the key themes moving forth in the future. Regions, sectors, technical assistance, and common metrics. So what I did today was invite two very distinguished members from the community and from our state. Great appreciation that they came so far to be before you, because they're going to be the voice of the regions. So that you hear what's going on at the regional level, one, in terms of what's needed by the workforce of the regions, and second, how our community college responds to the needs of the regions. So let me just quickly introduce our panelists here, and we will do the same format as we've done before. I have two questions for each of them, and then we'll turn it over to Chairman Humestein to facilitate. So on my left is Becky Morgan. Becky has a very distinguished career, not only with Bank of America, Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors. She was also a California state senator and ran the joint venture Silicon Valley, which was a formidable regional organization that mobilized Silicon Valley towards its own economic growth and quality of life after the 1990s recession. And we had crossed paths many moons ago, and while she was running that program, she was able to turn out 24 titans of Silicon Valley, each for $1 million, to contribute towards this regional vitality effort. That alone can tell you what a leader she is for the region. And then on my right, many of you know Dr. Diane Van Hook, who has been 24 years at the helms of Santa Clarita Community College District and the College of Canyons. During her tenure, her budget grew from $8 million to $187 million. And she's taken a leading role in economic development for her region, providing training to more than 2,700 employees and over 800 area businesses. So she has been able to be responsive to students while concurrently answering the call of her region. All right, so with that, let me start by peppering questions to the left. So Becky, you've been leading a multi-year effort called Can Do California, founded on the belief that thriving regions lead to a thriving state. And you'll be co-hosting, along with many others, the California Economic Summit coming up on May 11th. So tell us more about that work and what regional economies have said about their workforce needs.
Thank you, Vaughn, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's been almost 19 years since I was in the Senate and hearing testimony, so it's interesting to be on the other side of the table after all these years, and a bit unusual for me. But I wanted to tell you first and foremost what a fan I am of community colleges. As far as I'm concerned, you are the game changers. And for me personally, when I wanted to go to Stanford Business School, I went back to Foothill College to prove to them that I could still learn, since I'd been out of my undergraduate years for 16 years. And my son went to De Anza College to learn how to write before he went to UC Davis. So I have personal experience and personal enthusiasm, plus having watched what you've done all these years. Now, I also believe that we have to think regionally, that the geographic and political boundaries that were established as much as 150 years ago really don't work for California anymore, being as large a state as it is. And so the legislation that I was asked to carry back in 1991 about setting up a regional governance panicked everybody, and they thought it was another layer of government. Not what we intended at all. The legislation lost by 1 vote. But I've been working on a regional approach ever since. And 5 years ago, I co-founded what is called the California Stewardship Network, because I do believe that we have to think differently, work together in regions that have some compatibility, and think in that way. Anyways, Richard, Florida has said, I think it's also time to reset our priorities and our policies. And so the California Stewardship Network did develop work with 11 regions of California, working together, and our family foundation seeded these 11 regions to work on the projects that they thought were most important to their region. And these are existing organizations in most cases, like the Los Angeles Economic Development Council. But there are also new groups like Chico that is working on education, particularly of 3rd and 4th graders, to prepare for higher education. And we've seeded these. They come together twice a year to learn from each other, with the goal that these regions, in fact, can be part of reviving California. And from this 4 years of work, it was decided to hold 14 forums throughout California, from San Diego to the Redwood Coast, from the Monterey Bay area to the Sierra Nevada, and find out what people were thinking, and then on May 11th hold a summit to refine this with representation from about 500 people throughout California. And if it's not too late for you to sign up. It is this Friday, May 11th in Santa Clara. But out of that, those 14 forums have come results in the areas that people were questioned about. And we had electronic voting at the 14 forums, and we had then virtual voting following that. So the paper that you have in front of you here, and thank you, Vaughn, for providing that, is a summary of the votes in these 14 forums. And what is relevant today and what you'll see is that training for major industry sectors ranked the highest within our smart workforce. And expansion of career technical education was number 2. And I think that is very relevant to what I would ask of you and what I can commit to you through our work. We call it smart workforce, smart being specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And that's what we hope to refine on Friday, and to be able to continue to work with you and our community colleges going forward. And one of the things that I would like to emphasize in this first question, and I'll elaborate more because I know Vaughn has a second question, is how diverse our regions of California are. And that when we set policy, that it's important to be mindful of this diversity. One size doesn't fit all. And whether we're working on broadband in the Redwood Coast, or the tech businesses in Silicon Valley, or the medical and agricultural down in San Diego and Imperial County, the kind of education that community colleges can provide, we believe needs to be geared for the kind of jobs that people in these regions aspire for, and for which they're needed in the kind of industries throughout California. So that's just the beginning and an introduction of the 5 years of work that I've been doing with many others, and how I see it relating to community colleges, believing that you are the people and those that you represent throughout California to really have an impact on preparing our residents for jobs here in the state.
Is the volume?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Very good. Thank you, Becky. So, Diane, decisions are being made at colleges locally, so regarding budgets and courses and programs and how it responds to the regions. And in a conversation with Wheeler North from the Academic Senate, we were talking about how the Career Technical Education Mission is doing, and we said, well, take a look at the portfolio of CTE as a percentage of FTES. Thank you. And so this is what you have in front of you. And what you see here is, in terms of the basket, the collective basket, we have a 10-year downward trend. Now, after looking at this, I did look at the absolute numbers, and though in absolute numbers, we have more programs than before. What we need to think about is why, even in the good years, when there's more money to the system, why doesn't career technical education capacity rise proportionately, especially when you have heard so much angst and need from both at the state level and at the regional level. So I'm going to ask you the hard question, Diane, of is CEO commitment, well, we know CEO commitment at the local level to addressing the region's economic need is important. But is it sufficient to respond to the region's call for more training by sector and to expand CTE? Tell us what is happening to the base of CEOs and how this affects colleges' responsiveness to their regional needs.
Well, they're leaving quickly. At the CCCT conference this last weekend, I was talking with someone who said that in the last year, with 2 or 3 more announcing that they're leaving, that we will have had 65 CEOs leave their positions in 1 year. And I know that's true because I go to CEO meetings. I don't hardly recognize anybody anymore. And I think that the average tenure is down to 4.3 years right now. And if in fact you take out the CEOs who have been here, the district level CEOs that have been here, there are 9, only 9 who've served in their current capacities for more than 7 years. And if you take out the 3 that are leaving, and actually if you just wipe out all of their accumulated years and you figure out what the tenure is, it's 2.5 years of a district CEO. Now, I once worked for a man, Bill Wenrick, down at Rancho Santiago, who passed away a couple years ago. And a long, long time ago, before Prop 13, he said, you should probably only stay where you are for 5 years. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, well, if you're really going to lead and you're going to make difficult decisions, you may not be able to stay anywhere for more than 5 years. And so I went to College of the Canyons. I wanted to work at College of the Canyons Took me 3 times applying to get to College of the Canyons, but I finally got it because of the area. I love working with business and industry. I love helping to contribute to the economy thriving, and I really get excited when you can match the needs of business with training opportunities for people to get into highly skilled technical fields that have a future. And that was one place that there was a lot of land, and I thought that that would be a good fit. I'm sure had I gone other places, I wouldn't have lasted very long because I don't do well in a retrenching environment. I'm a developer. I like to develop people and programs and partnerships. So I defied those odds, and soon we'll be starting my 25th year of service at College of the Canyons. I just started my 41st year in the public education system in California on March 3rd. I think that things take longer than 5 years. I think that relationships take a while to develop. And a business is not going to invest in you. They're not going to give you equipment or loaned resources or space or match money for many of the initiatives that are available through the federal government and through the chancellor's office, through the state government, if they don't know you're going to stay long enough to see it through. And that's the challenge that we have. And Jack and I were on the CEO board together. We debated system versus local control till we were like down and drug out. And there is a real important part of local control. But there's also what happens when a new CEO comes in and reconnoiters the focus for a particular district. So I think CEO turnover does have an impact. And I think that I also don't know that I believe that most CEOs understand economic development. I don't know that they know how to put partnerships together. I don't know there's a quick lesson you can take in that. We don't do much training of CEOs anymore. Back in the day, ACA used to do a lot of training, CEO academies and administrator seminars and drive-in workshops. We don't really have any training. It's kind of ad hoc and as one will. So I'm not sure where CEOs learn about budget, really. And it isn't easy budget in California. In fact, we lose. We just lost 2 CEOs back to other states because they can't figure out how we're funded and why it's so complicated and why it takes so long to get things and why you can't count on having the money next year for what you started last year and committed to somebody that you'd follow through. So I don't know where CEOs learn about that, but I do think that the CEO turnover definitely has an effect. Relationships are really what it's all about. It's about relationships inside and relationships outside. You cannot get faculty to trust you to do something new, to partner with your economic development arm of your college, to start an international center for trade and development without any money, to start a high-tech business incubator without any money, if they don't trust that you're going to be true to your word and that somebody isn't going to get the rug pulled out of them as you go forward. So I do think it has a big impact.
So then, Becky, you wore the hat as a state senator, so I know you understand the state perspective. And then you wore the regional hat as leader of Silicon Valley, joint venture Silicon Valley, and you fully well recognize the local control. So you appreciate sort of the 3 levels of our challenge and the leaders that we have or that we don't have. So how do you see the regional voice influencing the behaviors of the colleges, especially at this moment where they have diminishing resources, but you have a high call to action in terms of what has to be delivered for the workforce?
Big question. And I appreciate Diane's work, with whom I worked many years ago to get funding for some technology in some of our community colleges. Let me recognize right up front, though, that this workforce is not new. This whole topic I've been around with, workforce boards and councils and commissions and trying to develop the workforce that's needed. in our various regions. But I'm suggesting that we need to do it differently. And coming out of our forums, we had action teams. And there was one for Smart Workforce on which Lon served, which we very much appreciate. And one of the action items, and it's in, we can get copies to you, of our playbook that's going to be used on Friday to talk about infrastructure and regulation, workforce and capital. And under our workforce, we could see our regions helping with legislation that you want to pass, whether it's 1401 or 1402 or something new. And one of the goals is to seed and leverage funding for regional industrial partnerships. I really believe in partnerships and in collaboration. I think working in our silos doesn't work. And that was what I did at Joint Venture Silicon Valley, was to get the corporate sector and the public sector working together. On education, we focus more K-12, but it can work in community colleges, I believe. Pulling in your corporate leaders, and they don't have to be the big 500. They can be your small business people. We're working up in Chico with a man who runs an engineering company. He's so excited about the work he's doing in 3rd and 4th graders. I pull in small business people as well as the larger business people and the people that have worked in this workforce area and are open to doing things differently. And I am concerned about the chart that you have on career technical education and how it is declining. Because done well, it is so important to how we provide our students and prepare them for the jobs that will be in the 21st century. All education has a problem in that we can't change fast enough to meet the needs of the jobs and the companies and the employers that change. And that's a piece of what I think community colleges can do. Yes, you are somewhat hindered by a system that doesn't allow you to dismiss people whose course may not be relevant. I understand that system. On the other hand, any opportunity to have part-time people that can respond to the need of the 21st century as opposed to the 1950s or 1960s. It doesn't do much good in Fresno to have somebody teaching farming methods from the 1950s. But to bring somebody in that knows what's happening now with tillage and with copper on brake pads and things like that that affect farmers and affect our environment are the kind of people that need to be teaching. And frankly, I think there's a role for corporations and foundations in working with you. I think it's relevant, and so let me share what is happening at Cornell University, where I served on the Board of Trustees. They're well aware that they don't have all of the faculty that they need for the kinds of education and jobs that's being asked for today and into the future. They have raised $200 million to hire faculty in advance of an opening. And I'm thinking, can community colleges go out to corporations and foundations and get a pool of money together to, while you might not have an opening because someone hasn't retired, but to hire somebody that is appropriate for the work going forward. I mean, you haven't needed many people teaching real estate in the last few years, as we've lost 700,000 jobs in the construction and real estate industry. But if you could bring somebody in that's prepared in San Diego, for instance, to teach biomedical technology, which they may not have enough of, that kind of flexibility is something that I'm offering the work of the California Stewardship Network and the people that are working on this summit on Friday to work with you on. We need to train and hire for future jobs, and we need to prepare our students for those future jobs. And in our work that we did with the California Stewardship Network, that our tagline is "Thriving regions lead to a thriving state." We said we shouldn't be asking without being willing to give. And so we're asking of all that we work with in these various areas to endorse and promote what we are doing through our action teams, like Vaughn served on in workforce, and to create partnerships within our regions. Not necessarily statewide, but let the regions work regionally, because they know what the industry clusters are that are going to be hiring your students. And then we pledge to work with you, whether it's working to find people within your region to form these partnerships, or to help work with you on legislation that will be beneficial to our students. And so that's what I'm looking forward to, and I know Diane and all the people that work in workforce training are busy also, but I think it is, as I say, a need for collaboration in the 21st century.
Okay, and our last question goes to Diane. So, Diane, as you've talked about the churn in CEOs, you're sort of our best case scenario system leader, stable, long-term relationships and leadership. And you actually defied gravity because your 10-year trend went from 22% to 36 instead of the other way around. So you actually helped our 10-year average. So what policy levers would you use to align community college interests with that of regional economies?
Well, we plan all the time at College of the Canyons. We really plan for success, and our planning is integrated. One of the things I was hired to do at College of the Canyons, the board did the search themselves, and they really wanted 6 things. They wanted money, they wanted buildings, they wanted plans that worked and that you didn't just put on the shelf. They wanted to change the image of College of the Canyons from a cute little place next to the onion fields with the cows across the road to a driver in the local economy. They wanted partnerships developed, and they wanted me to innovate. So you can understand why I wanted to go there. It was a great place to go to work. Success really starts with SMART goals. And it starts with SMART goals in a growth mindset. And I was listening to the prior presentation, and I do have some data for you, Dr. Scott, on a program that we started in 2006, which was a condensed cohort learning in basic skills, which shows that the English progression in that cohort from an English 81 to English 101 was 79%, as opposed to the regular progression of 26%. And in math, it was 62%, as opposed to the regular way we offered the curriculum at 17%. We also have a Math 75, which I'll send you some information on, which gets students ready for statistics in one semester, 12 cohorts of it this semester, 375 students. So we aren't just looking at one class, we're looking at a little bit better data. But all of that's based on this book, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck at Stanford University. She says that the problem with the way people learn is they base it on what they've done before, not what they're capable of doing. And that if you're always comparing yourself to what you did before, your bar is set wherever that bar was. When you believe that you can do anything, if you put the right strategy and tenacity and persistence and commitment and self-confidence into it, then you'll be able to do that. So I believe that's what we've done, and that's why our bar has gone up. We have 1,101 approved courses in our curriculum inventory. 57% of them are CTE courses. 85% of all of our courses transfer that we offer, and 85% of all of our CTE courses transfer. The old mindset is this is blue collar. I was a counselor in the late 70s, well, mid 70s, and I gotta tell you, I got out of counseling. I moved into program development and setting up a foundation and doing voc ed regional coordination in Orange County. And the reason is that you'd have a student come in, and what you would do is you would say, well, Mr. Azumi, are you going to be pursuing a transfer course of study or a terminal degree? Now, how inspirational is that? A terminal degree. Who in their right mind would say, yoo-hoo, right here, I want a terminal degree? So we, in some colleges, haven't changed the nomenclature. Thank heavens we don't call them terminal anymore. But we haven't changed it to highly skilled technical fields in well-paying jobs of the future. We all know that 75% of the jobs that were eliminated in this recession are not coming back as they were. They're coming back in the form of something else. So if you have that mindset, and if you articulate your CTE courses so that they transfer on an equal par with the rest of your coursework, of course you're going to have a greater taker rate. In addition, you really do need to bring external resources, and I appreciate what Becky Morgan said. I want to tell you a story, a brief story about Becky Morgan. So back in 1991, I had finally secured that first state money for some building remodel, and it was to remodel some old space that had been built in 1968 when College of the Canyons began. And those were the days when the legislature approved the working drawing money in one year, and the construction money in the next year, and the equipment money in the next year. And I want to say that Pete Wilson was the governor, but I could be wrong about that. And he was threatening to veto all of the equipment money after the state had invested millions, even in those days, to build new buildings. And I had been up with Vice Chancellor Joe Newmeyer many times to these different hearings, and we were getting absolutely nowhere. So I decided to take a different approach, and I decided not to come forward. Joe and I went up to the table in one of the older hearing rooms in the old part of the Capitol. Now you know what I'm going to say, don't you? And I decided not to say we need money for computers in our new CAD/CAM lab, because I'd asked many times for the money. I hadn't gotten anywhere. And so it was in front of Senate budget. Gary Hart was there, and Rebecca Morgan was there. I remember she was sitting over to the left. And I have a great memory. I called up some students from, somebody from Sac City, had them bring some students over to put in the hearing room, and told them to be polite and quiet and respectful, but, you know, when it was appropriate, they should emote. And and I said, well, you know, I'm not here to ask you for any money, because I've been told no so many times that, you know, I feel like a revolving door and it's kicking me on the way out. This is what I want to know. I have a press breakfast scheduled tomorrow morning in my cafeteria, and I know that at least my local paper, The Signal and the Daily News, will be there. And I know they're going to say, now that you've been working on remodeling old spaces in 4 or 5 buildings, when can we count on you opening those spaces to provide some of that state-of-the-art training you've been talking to us about for 2 years? And I just need some help on what I should say to this question when they ask me. Because frankly, all I can really tell them is, I'm sorry, we can't open this space because I haven't yet figured out how to teach computer-assisted drafting and design on 1969 Singer sewing machines. And you started to laugh. Gary Hart stood up. There was a brief conversation, and you not only approved my $667,000 for equipment, but you approved everybody's that was being held up. We can't do it by ourselves. So we decided we're not going to get in that pickle again. We went out, we formed collaborations, as it was noted earlier. We've actually we've worked with 4,000 businesses since 2006 and trained 27,000 local workers. We have regional collaboratives. We run a CACT. We have an SBDC that we picked up other regions because colleges didn't think they could find the match money to make it work, so they've given it back, so the lead agency has called us. We have an employee training institute, which is It's self-funded. We just acquired the WorkSource Center from the city of Santa Clarita, so we're running that on our campus, all in one wing. All of these things work together. And we helped to form an economic development corporation for our area. I was a founding member, and they're located in the same wing. So we have everything going on together. The WorkSource Centers, we're in a fairly well-to-do area of Santa Clarita. 40% of our students qualify for services through the WorkSource Center. And I can guarantee you that their service to our community has almost tripled since they moved into the University Center a year and a half ago. So we really work hard to form partnerships and collaboratives. As a result of that, as a result of businesses stepping up to help us, to provide seed money, to give us space, to give us equipment, to loan us executives, we have been able to generate $26 million in training to enhance the workforce training in our region, to enable companies, including Aerospace Dynamics International, which just won Boeing's #1 Supplier of the Year award 2 weeks ago in Chicago, to be able to upgrade their training so they can compete and bring more business into our region. They built us a $6 million manufacturing education training center in one of their buildings. The hospital put a clinical education center into the local Henry Mayo Newhall for us, and donate the cost of salary and benefits for one full-time nursing instructor every year. Advanced Bionics gave us space for a clean room, which let us leverage that to a $1.1 million Department of Commerce grant to start a nanobiotechnician training program. It's all about leveraging. It's all about collaboration. But you have to state, this is where you want to go. You have to be really clear about it. And I think that we do that with great vigor. Contemplation and planning are important, but the future and the significance is shaped by what we do. We need to do what we need to do. We need to do what we want to do, and we need to paint our future with those actions. If we don't go after what we want, we'll never have it. If we never ask, the answer will always be no. So I think we need to step forward and pave the way to that success through bold and different actions than we've taken in the past.
Thank you. Okay, I want to make sure we have adequate time here for board member comments. Member Ramos.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that dynamic set of responses to those very, very complicated questions. It's a complicated matter. I guess what I want to ask is, our experts' thoughts on what is it that we want. I mean, there's a lot of things I think the questions you posed at the end there were very compelling, but I would guess, looking at it as a kind of, outside observer, our state economy is probably going to be relying more and more heavily on maybe 5 or 6 sectors in the short to intermediate term that are going to generate the jobs that we need to be training people to fit into. So, my guess is that if you look at healthcare, that's going to be a growth sector. If you look at infrastructure and transportation, that's going to have to be a growth sector, just because we've got an aged, kind of antiquated, infrastructure. Green technology is obviously an area that we've all talked about and had great hopes in. The export sector, I think, is going to be something that we want logically to be able to fuel. And speaking of Richard, Florida, I think the creative fields, given our finesse in that area, in the media and the entertainment industry, and Silicon Valley and the computer sector, all of those fields, it seems to me, we would probably agree, are going to be the spaces where we want to find some more synergy between the output and the demand. On the other hand, we know from just looking at the past 30 years of our experience in this country that the dynamic of our economy is so rapid and so complex and so unpredictable that training people for just sort of immediate kind of jobs in these fields may not be enough, because we probably don't know 5 or 10 or 15 years from now, even if these sectors are generating the jobs, what kind of jobs are we going to be having? It may be, we may have revolutions in technology that we can't anticipate that will change that landscape. So my question is, what is the proper balance between developing pipeline programs to train people for jobs that we know will happen in these, articulated sectors, whether it's regionally or statewide, And then what is on the other side, the need that we have to kind of look at a softer but equally important set of investments in transferable skills, looking at, critical and systems thinking, looking at innovation and collaborative instincts that we have to have in workers generally, at any level now, looking at multiculturally relevant leadership training. How do we kind of think about the proper role of the community college system in creating workers that are not only geared to these likely growth sectors, but that are going to be mobile, that are going to be adaptable in a context of rapid change that is largely unpredictable?
Well, first of all, I think you start with Diane's mindset, my can-do attitude. But more specifically and seriously to your question, we do have to depend on our K-12 system to get our students prepared, because if a student can read and do even basic computation, they will have a chance to be flexible, to move from one kind of job to another. So I don't want to short-sight the basic education that's needed to allow somebody to move throughout their lifetime. I've had about 6 jobs myself, and I didn't train for some of them. On the other hand, the highest priority in polls of Californians today is the issue of jobs. And if students don't have that underlying training and then the specific training, they're not ready for the jobs, and that's why we have not only unemployment but underemployment. So I think for me it's a matter of looking at curriculums, both statewide and within community colleges within specific regions. And I think you can identify about 18 regions of California that you could work within and say, what are the industry clusters in those regions? And what are the skill needs? So for me, it's the balance between having what we used to call basics, they go by fancier names today, and then identifying within each region the needs of those employers.
Do you, just a quick follow-up, and I want to hear obviously from Dr. Van Hook, but do you agree that this balance between sort of harder skills and softer skills, not that softer is less important, is a right way to understand the equation? Is that an incorrect or a correct analysis of the challenge?
I think the balance is important. That's my personal opinion. I think that personally, we need to demand more of our K-12 system, and through our foundation, we primarily work in early childhood education, thinking reading is one of the most important skills, and with professional development of first and second year teachers, so they stay in the system. But they'll never, the need for some remediation will probably never disappear. And so I see that as a community college role, continuing those basic skills. But I see community colleges as being a perfect place for meeting the workforce needs within that region. And then they can transfer to other jobs if they're well educated.
Dr. Van Hook, your thoughts on that?
I think Fortune 500 companies are still prioritizing that the most important things that they want in their workers are people who can communicate, people who can become part of a team, people who have common sense, which seems to be a little bit absent today, and people who can reason. And I'm not always sure that all this technology, as you see, I've got 2 pieces with me right here at the table, enable us to actually reason. I think they give us stuff quickly, but I'm not sure we can think through things. So I think those things are always going to be present, but they're also, I think, businesses looking for someone to hire who has the confidence in their own ability to continue to learn, who has had some success and knows that they can apply that and learn a whole new application. That's what we do when we work with these 4,000 companies. We help them train their employees to the next generation of whatever it is, whether it's innovation, problem solving, or thinking. I mean, my gosh, Al Mann's biotech companies, Al Mann is the billionaire that has started all these companies that invented the insulin pump and the cochlear implant and the pacemaker. And do you know how they innovate over there? They have tables throughout their institute, which is their foundation, which is really where the patents are created, of Legos. Tables, right down the middle of the aisles, where people, if they have a concept, will go and rather than try to formulate it out, will try to put it together to see that it works. So I think it has to be a combination. I do think it has to be, though, I don't believe that the CSU system is doing a very good job with training teachers. They don't get science methodology classes when they go through. I was an elementary school teacher, mortified when I had to teach my first science lesson, surely mortified. So one of the things that we're doing at College of the Canyons, we have an Institute for Teaching and Learning for our own staff.
Dr. Van Hook, I need you to
Okay.
speed up a little bit.
Okay,
'cause
I will.
We're running out of time, thanks.
And we also have just started a K-6 science initiative with all of our local elementary schools to teach electronics in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So I think you have to come about it from the full range, and you can't just do it once. You got to continue to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Baca, followed by Member McDougall.
Senator Morgan, Dr. Van Hook, thank you for being here this morning. I was at the Triple CT conference this past weekend too, and Vice Chancellor Ton Quinlivan headed a workshop, and you know, Diana and I have known each other for quite some time, and she's a real champion in the area up there. But the thing that stuck out in my mind in listening to one of the two panelists, and one of the was a trustee at your district, is the role that the trustees there have taken. Now, you know, it's always a partnership, CEO and trustee board, and it appears that you've managed to keep them away from managing the supply budget and focused on this partnership development. Could you say just a little bit about the work that you and the trustees have done in terms of leading this effort and what their role has been, and what you would advise to other trustee boards in this area?
Our trustees have self-determined that one of their roles is to represent and get the word out about what the college is doing in the community and bring interests back to me so that they can be channeled to the right department to follow up on. Many of our exceptional partnerships are as a result of that. Mr. Bruce Fortine, who spoke at the conference, brought us to Bayless Engineering, which resulted in a very large grant to obtain laser welding equipment, some of which was supported through the Chancellor's office. We're now the only college to have this equipment this side of the Rockies, and it is an industry drawer to that cluster of manufacturing, which is critical to our state and nation's recovery. So they take it upon themselves, as they're out and about in the community, to bring information to us. We create simple talking points, 4 to 6 bullets. We give them 4 or 5 of those every 3 or 4 months, and those are the things we want them to talk about when they're out at the chamber or the VIA or wherever it is. So I think they do an exceptional job of that. They have immense pride, and they want to see us move forward. They bring in tons of resources for us.
Just to add a comment, you know, being on a trustee board, a local trustee board, and it probably has to do with longevity of CEOs. You know, the short term doesn't allow maybe the time not only to develop those partnerships, but to really encourage and to develop trustee board involvement in this area, which is extremely key. So I think that CEOs providing guidance in that area is really critical.
Member McDougall. And I'll try to be quick, but when we have a presentation such as this, the 2 major outcomes that I look for are, number one, have I understood what the presenters given to us? And number 2, what are the implications for the Board of Governors in terms of the message? In terms of President Diane Van Hook, I feel the message was tremendously clear. I also tend to think it's tremendously valid as well. And that message was how critically important it is to have stability in the chief executive officer's position at our community colleges. That stability combined with creative and committed leadership is essential in enabling the potential of the institution to be realized.
And that stability and capability must be linked with a commitment to collaborate, and collaborate broadly within the community in order to have the kind of success that is needed. That was my takeaway. The implication of that takeaway for the board, as I see it, is what, if anything, might be our role in trying to assist on the stabilization of leadership in the system. I recognize the tremendous complexity of that question, but it also begs an answer, and I think it is important for us to look at. In terms of Senator Morgan, who I very much appreciate your being here as well as Diane, what I took away from your presentation was the importance of a regional focus and how critical that is. That there is a lot of room for partnerships with business, that in many ways business has come together, and their coming together presents a state of readiness to link more effectively with community colleges, and particularly to have that linkage take place on a regional basis. Those are my takeaways. The implication from my standpoint is how do we as a board, with the wonderful staff that we have in this area, affect those kind of linkages to occur. So that's what I see as the follow-up for it. I do want to address the comment you made about helping with legislation. I think in some areas it can be particularly important to have a person with the expertise you have, but also with the backing of a business group that can support an initiative that the Chancellor's office might present, particularly in terms of enabling flexibility to be present in areas where there are blockages because of rules that we might have. And I don't mean this in any way to be disrespectful, but I can't help but bringing up the role of corporate citizenship and the responsibility of corporate citizens. What is the primary need for our community colleges today? And I know you're aware of this. Financial support that will enable us to do the critical job that we have to do. How does that relate to corporate citizenship? I can't help but bring up the revelation, at least to me, about Apple and where their revenues, how they position themselves so as not to be able to pay taxes in the state of California. And I don't know what business is doing to look at that role of corporate citizen in terms of what is the legitimate, if you will, tax liability that we should enjoy for the privilege of paying in California. And again, I don't want to be in any way negative, but I can't help but present that last issue as well.
You want a response, or are you just
If
gonna
you'd
say-
like a brief response.
Well, I think we have avoided the tax issue because this first summit, I mean, it's a startup. And we figured that K-12 education, taxes and pensions were just too controversial. And so we focused on, infrastructure, innovation, workforce, and capital. And I can only work in the regional level and go share my experience in Silicon Valley, where we were blessed to have Martha Cantor as our CEO. And speaking to the board trustee relationship, she took Al Plotkin, her trustee, to Sacramento with her as her deputy. So that was an example of a working relationship between CEO and trustee that worked very well. And he was the trustee who really introduced the idea of electronic books that is catching on. We did what I think Diane has done in her community college, or was done at Foothill De Anza, is to go out to the corporate world, invite them into the campus, and they also fully facilitated, or what's the word I'm looking for, funded the technical school about 10 or 12 years ago. And now there is an environmental program where they're being brought in. They're training for, water quality, environmental protection, wildlife pathways, some really outstanding things. And they've gone out to the business community and who need to know that they have quality water, quality air for many of their products. And finding that hook by the leadership of a community college to the corporate and say, we can do this for you, we need your help. And frankly, the number one is funding, in addition to the taxes, but it's also ideas. And it's that kind of working relationship that I think can work.
Okay, thank you both very much for taking the time to be with us. President Van Hook, I did want one thing you didn't mention that I'm a huge fan of is what you did with developing the Joint Youth Center at your college. I actually am involved in looking at developing something similar in San Diego. Kind of actually talked to some of your folks there, but that is an amazing piece of work and would like to visit it sometime.
Well, you're most welcome. We have
But
40 degrees now.
It's amazing.
40 bachelor's and
Yeah.
master's degrees and all the teaching
It's-
credentials and
yeah.
another 12 coming in next year, so they
Yeah.
can get their degree right there.
Well, I would like an invitation to that
All right.
at some point, but
I'll invite you on the back of this pamphlet.
very good. Thank you very much.
My thanks to the board for continuing this journey.